Hello everybody, today's video is dedicated to Bordeomtube, and this is because he watched my video on the exposure pie where I explain in a very understandable way the exposure triangle. He understood everything and had just one simple question: where do you get your initial settings from when you are out in the field and going to shoot? Well, this is a very good question. In fact, let's start with these two images that I took in aperture priority. When I shoot in aperture priority, the only thing that I have to worry about is the aperture. For the first image, I wanted to have a shallow depth of field. I just wanted to have my focus really on the first lamp in the foreground, and so I choose a f-stop of 2.8 because this is the biggest opening my lens could give me. And for both images I set the ISO because of the light circumstances on ISO 400. I come back to this in a second. The camera delivered me a shutter speed of 1250ths of a second. This was what the result of the measuring what the camera did, so that I had a spot on exposure. The next image I took at f16 because I wanted to have the background more in focus. As you can see, it's nearly the lamp in the background is nearly sharp, not as sharp as it could. This was because I was very close to the lamp in the foreground, but however you see the difference in depth of field, that it's very sharp overall. And the shutter speed that the camera delivered on the base of the measurement that it did was in this case 1/30th of a second. And this was also the reason why I choose ISO 400. I knew if I go smaller with my f-stop and so got a deeper depth of field, the camera would have to let light in longer. And I knew if I would go with my ISO lower than 400, let's say 100, the shutter speed would be even longer, so longer than 1/30th of a second. Let's say it would be 1/8 of a second or something like that. And this is of course to a certain degree experience what you have, but it's in fact not that. It's in the first instance trial and error, but you know at a certain moment the camera will deliver this when I do that. And if you go for depth of field, if this is your priority, you can easily go to aperture priority. So let's go to another example. We don't even need to do some photos for this, because if you want to, for example, let's say you give a darn about the depth of field because your priority lies on the shutter speed, because you want horses that are run, well, that you want to see the legs frozen in the air instead of blurry showing that they are running. So what you do now is you go to shutter speed priority, the camera delivers the aperture what's necessary to give you a proper exposure. You still want to use, of course, you want to control the ISO yourself. I come back on that in a shorty, very short. Okay. Now let's say you want to control everything manually, and for this purpose I'm going to show you the display above on the camera, and where you see what's underneath the image in the viewfinder. In Canon, this goes from, in the middle would be perfect exposure, then to the left you would go stops down, so you go in the underexposed direction, and when you go to the right you go in the overexposed direction. I don't know how this looks in Nikon, as I don't shoot Nikon, but should be very similar in displaying over and underexposed. I hear from people who shoot Nikon that they often say they rather shoot underexposed than overexposed. I totally understand that you can better get a little bit underexposed than overexposed, but from my thing is to expose correctly, and then you can go in every direction what you want in post-process. I don't standard go underexposed. I just feel that it's bullock. However, so many people, so many choices how to work, right? So let's have a look at the meter thingy or the display, both on the camera when you go into manual, when you want to have the full control about everything. So what you can see here is that if I press the shutter button half, here this little dot will appear and show me that I'm approximately one stop underexposed, as this sticker mark here is the exact middle. What would say it's a very good exposure. Here I'm 1 to 2 stops. You see here it's a 1 actually 1, 2 and so forth. What would say I'm between 1 and 2 stops underexposed. So what I do now, the shutter is already very low and I'm in manual mode now. So this, if I go higher with my shutter speed, the underexposure will be even worse. So if I then take a larger aperture here, what's 2.8 in this case, you see that I'm going, and this is a coincidence of course, I would have the optimal exposure here. If I now would, for example, go higher with my ISO, let's say 1 stop higher, what would be from 400 to 800, you see that I'm exactly 1 stop overexposed. So, and this is in fact how you can get your initial settings if you go full manually and have a look at your exposure metering. So, and then it's on you of course if you want to decide if you rather go over or underexposed. As I said, my experience with, especially with Canon, is I'm always good when I have it right in the middle, when it's good, perfect exposed. The exposure is perfect according to the metering of the Canon. I have yeah, great experiences with that. You can better go underexposed than overexposed because it's more, in the shadows is most of the time more what you can get back. Blown out highlights, it's just destroyed. This is what I experienced. So I hope this helps and I wish you happy shooting. Have a great day ahead. Thanks for watching and goodbye.